One must not reveal too much of the mystery because the royals have faults, dishonesties, nastinesses like anyone else. A lot of us happen to think that the illusions and idealization which surround this family is quite a healthy thing. Everyone needs vehicles for their social dreams. Oh my word, I thought he was about to finish that sentence by saying, a lot of us happen to think that the illusions and idealizations which surround this family is quite an unhealthy thing. But no, he says a healthy thing. We all need dreams. We all need celebrities who can host our dreams and ambitions, our wildest social dreams. Hello, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new, then welcome. I'd like to earn your subscription today. Well, we are in part 2 of a 1983 Time magazine printing. It's from February 28th, 1983, and it is about royalty versus the press. Here on the cover, we can see Princess Anne, Prince Charles, we've got the Queen and King, we've got Margaret, all sorts, and we've got this seedy girlfriend of Prince Andrew that I hadn't even known about. If you missed part 1, go listen. That part was crazy. Honestly, the thing that I found so crazy about this article is, oh my goodness, I just came across this advertisement, y'all, for ET. We should be going through this magazine very carefully, I think. It says, look to Time magazine to understand Steven Spielberg. Interesting. Well, the thing I found most interesting about the first part of this article that we read last time was how prescient it is on so many different points, that there was so much focus on Diana, but they still had to give honor to the Queen and Prince Philip as the principals. And the truth about Prince Andrew was already right there in front of everybody's faces. The mention of a divorce surprised me. 1983, and in a very respectable publication, they're just mentioning that, oh yeah, it said that Charles was desolate, that a divorce was not possible. I didn't even realize that was a thing in 1983 yet, because they didn't divorce until the 90s. So many good things in the first part of this article. Let's keep going with the royalty versus the press, and then we'll see what else this issue has to hold for us. So the first thing is just, I want to look across the top at the different photos that are given. So we have the Queen Mom with her fluffy hat. We've got Princess Anne, who I didn't realize was perceived as arrogant. She does look rather young and arrogant in that photo, doesn't she? Naff off. Margaret, will the agony ever end? Her glamour at this point was coming to an end, wasn't it? She had been the beautiful, glamorous princess, and now here she was starting to get old and probably have regrets. Here we have proud Charles has a break from nappies. Right, I'm sure he was just up to his elbows in doing the diapers. It says, Sandringham, Prince Charles carries young Prince William in a basket. Cameramen on the stalk at Balmoral. So that makes the case of what we are talking about, that royals were the prey and the press was stalking them. All right. The rubbishy news of the world called Dempster's outburst rubbish too. Remember, Dempster had indulged himself with a lofty and fairly encyclopedic denunciation of Diana's faults. He had said she was spoiled, fiendish, a monster, was spending way too much on clothes, and shaming the upper classes, as well as making Prince Charles desperately unhappy. So News of the World calls Dempster's outburst rubbish. Like Whitaker, he is unruffled. Royal watchers tend to identify themselves with the family and even imagine that they are on intimate terms. She should be brought up short, the avuncular Dempster explains. The message got through to Diana that she cannot behave badly and that she had better start pulling up her socks. Since then, I assume that must be a British phrase that means like tidy yourself up, get yourself together. Is that what that means? Since then, she has been out all day, visiting hospitals and talking to children. She is showing more interest in Charles's hobbies. She is wearing the same clothes over again. What I am saying to her is, I know you are having a difficult time, but best to start behaving before the hatchet-type journalists start getting on to you. Hopefully, that has been averted now. Of course, nothing had been averted except a peaceful winter for the royals. Palace efforts to bargain with the Fleet Street scamps, a photo opportunity in exchange for privacy over the year-end holidays, dissolved in futility as the pack went hallooing off in all directions after Coup, Andrew, Charles, and Diana. Okay, we're back to Coup, so I'm just going to remind us all, this is who Coup is. Apparently, a tawdry actress. They called it soft porn. Here's Andrew. This is all pre-Fergie, which I didn't even realize. I guess I kind of, in my perception at least, Diana and Fergie had come on the scene at the same time. The photos that I saw were like they were the young generation of royals together. So I didn't realize that Andrew had his own trash before they were married and after and probably during. Coup had shown surprising staying power for a princely romance, despite speculative Queen bans Coup and bust up as Andy is told to drop his girl headlines in the Sun, a journal that occasionally runs its royal coverage down the side of what it calls its tits and bums page in giddy proximity to the precariously cantilevered breasts and shyly undraped buttocks of naked models. I can reveal that Andrew would dearly love to settle down with Coup, 26, and raise a family, wrote Harry Arnold in The Sun. This was for public consumption. Privately, Arthur Edwards, the veteran Sun photographer, said, "We can't have Princess Coup as an example to the nation's youth." Duh, Prince Andrew. You know, isn't it? His own father would supposedly, famously say, one goes out, one walks out with actresses, one does not marry them. In any case, the lady was proving royally elusive. Photographer Stephen Wood, who had spotted Coup and Randy Andy as the press took to calling the prince on their flight to Mystique last fall, never got a shot of the pair. He tried from a chartered yacht, tried heroically while water skiing behind a motorboat, and tried in jungle stakeouts where, he admitted dolefully, "The police always found me." Some 24 other journalists, inexpensively chartered watercraft, also flopped. Back in London this winter, things have not been much better. Fast-moving freelance photographer Mauro Carraro, 23, who quit hunting crime shots 18 months ago to concentrate on the much more profitable ambush of royals. This is him. This was the photographer that we looked at last time. So he's got his long lens. He's ready to go with the royals. Well, Carraro finally got a picture of Andrew that was good enough for the Mirror's front page. Carraro hustled hard for his art and the $25,000 or so a year that it brings him. That wasn't that much money back then for this kind of work. During one brief period this winter, he broke off the chase for Coup at the Queen's retreat at Sandringham and flew to Switzerland, where Coup was rumored to be skiing. Then it was back to London and off on a fast rumble to Sandringham again, in the sort of automotive projectile that is essential for royal chasing, a Golf GTI that Carraro says will go more than 100 miles per hour. Diana was supposed to be there taking riding lessons. Family tradition suggests that a Windsor queen should be able to ride. But the princess, who fell from a horse when she was small, has no love for the sport. Carraro's information was accurate. After dodging hordes of amateur cameramen and the police, and being scared silly by the Queen's pack of search dogs as he hid with 2 other cameramen in bushes near the Sandringham riding fields, he clicked off $1,500 worth of shots of Diana, the Queen, and Charles on horseback. Charles saw us, and he was fuming, Carraro recalled happily. We ran like hell. There are a lot of fast moves in this business. Well, this goes back to exactly what we were talking about. And it's interesting to read about for me because I have mostly existed in the space past this time, where essentially the royals and the press sort of came to some sort of detente, like, we will give you X number of shots in exchange for you leaving us alone for the rest of the time. So they would trade, a half hour with the press at the start of a ski vacation so that then they could have the rest in peace. And I wonder if this was just on the cusp of that decision. It sounds like that decision hadn't been arranged yet. The $1,500 smudge, remember we learned that means photo, paid expenses and kept Carraro in motion. After a day at home, he flew back to Switzerland to stalk Charles and Diana on their ski trip. But for Carraro and several dozen other English continental photographers, the assignment paid off only in vast Alps of aggro. British slang for aggravation, so mountains of aggravation. The Princess of Wales by now had reached her choking point. She refused to play her role as royal photo model. After a week of confusion and rancor, the London tabs had little to show for their efforts except a few murmurs from Prince Charles. Please, darling, please, darling. Some shots made immediately after he said, now I'm going to blow my nose for everyone to photograph. And huffily written stories of scary auto chases and photographers being roughed up by bodyguards. The hunters, and presumably the hunted, went home in sour moods, in time to read News of the World headlines about Diana's supposed on-rushing emotional breakdown. The story quoted University of Washington psychiatrist Dr. Thomas Holmes as saying that Diana had an 80% chance of becoming ill. On his Holmes Raw scale, which rates such stressful occurrences as marriage, 50, trouble with in-laws, 29, and change of financial state, 38, Diana scored an alarming 417. This put her in peril, the doctor was quoted as saying, of ailments ranging from a prolonged cold to an obsessive-compulsive disorder, such as the need to see your shoes precisely arranged. What's interesting about this, I'm pretty sure I've taken this test. Maybe it's not the same one, but I remember there was a time when we lived overseas, and I remember taking a test just like this, where they say, like, if you get over 100, you have an incredibly stressful life. And similarly, we had like 300 or 400 points, so absurd, beyond what the test supposedly says is going to send you into, physical or mental vulnerability. I will say, I imagine actually that entering the royal household, and this would apply to someone like a Meghan Markle as well, that it is probably like the culture shock that you experience of living in another country. Everything's done differently. You have to learn a new code of behavior that might have moral standards different than what your own personal standards would be if you weren't in that place. You have to learn a new way of talking. You have to carry yourself differently because of other people's expectations, not because of some inward change necessarily, but just because, like, if you move to Morocco, then as a woman, you're going to have to live in a particular way. If you go into the royal family as a woman or a man, you're going to have to behave in certain ways. So, and actually, this little section reminds me of the stressors of culture shock, and it makes me see that parallel where there is this added layer of stress to everything you're doing in life. So you're still getting married, like anybody else would. Princess Diana is getting married, but her marriage brings with it a complete culture shift of everything in her whole life that's overlaid over every possible action. Can she just go into the kitchen and make herself a grilled cheese? Is someone going to be offended? Is she going to put a foot wrong with the staffers? Is she going to, if she asks someone else to do it, is that going to offend that it's 2 a.m. and she wants a grilled cheese? And then things like, learning new things for banking, learning new things for how you relate to your family, figuring out how to relate to doctors and which ones are trustworthy so that you can relay information and get the help that you need, knowing that there's going to be discretion and care for your person first of all. So all kinds of things that overlaid her world with stress. Very interesting. It was perhaps time to reflect on a comment by Lacey, one of the calmest and most benign of the journalists who write about the monarchy. One must not reveal too much of the mystery because the royals have faults, dishonesties, nastinesses like anyone else. A lot of us happen to think that the illusions and idealization which surround this family is quite a healthy thing. Everyone needs vehicles for their social dreams. Oh my word, I thought he was about to finish that sentence by saying, a lot of us happen to think that the illusions and idealizations which surround this family is quite an unhealthy thing. But no, he says a healthy thing. We all need dreams. We all need celebrities who can host our dreams and ambitions, our wildest social dreams. Wow, this is like openly admitting we're using them as our avatars who will take on the hopes and thoughts and romantic ideas and absurd dramas that we wish to work out in our own heads. The tabloids have a ready rebuttal to this common sense, based on the scalding embarrassment that Fleet Street still feels about ignoring the love affair between Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson, which resulted in the king's abdication. The Sun's Arthur Edwards says that never again will the British press keep silent as they did in 1936. When Wallis Simpson waited for her divorce in Ipswich, the American papers ran the story. Fleet Street wasn't running it because the press barons had made a gentleman's agreement with the king. That was, in fact, censorship, says Edwards. But he also admits this is not a personal war against the palace press office. It is a question of what makes money. It's about circulation of papers. It's business. Yes, indeed. At week's end, business had taken Mauro Carraro and much of the rest of Fleet Street's merry band to Mayport, Florida. Why had they crowded out into this unlikely outpost? It seemed that Prince Andrew's ship, the aircraft carrier Invincible, was tying up at the naval station there so that the crew could rest up a bit, maybe get a look at U.S. military procedure. Tell us another, the press was thinking. Was it coincidence that Saturday would be his 23rd birthday and that, Ku's mother had a house in Venice, Florida, across the state? Hadn't Ku been spotted in New York City a few days before? Andrew fenced warily at a 2-minute press conference the day before. No, he didn't have any plans for the weekend, and I wouldn't tell all of you if I did. And no, he wouldn't buy the reporter drinks on his birthday. Oh, my word. Like most of the press capering, this was part of a strange, wistful, almost innocent quest for glimpses of beings about whose private selves, despite all of the lenses that have been trained on them, very little is known. Andrew and his royal relatives are well subsidized and perhaps should not complain about occasional aggravation. Snatched photos and nonsensical stories do very little serious harm. Oh my, this is like the first half of this story. We all know as we're reading this, we know her fate. We know what would happen just 14 years after this article is being written, but they're talking as if it would never happen. It's hard to read this and realize how wrong they were about this being no big deal. Snatched photos and nonsensical stories do very little serious harm. Until, of course, they cross some unmarked line of intrusiveness and cruelty. It is not unreasonable to worry, it is not unreasonable to worry about the pressure of incessant press coverage on Diana, whose lack of the lifelong experience with public exposure that a born and bred royal would have had has made her a special case. Well, interestingly, we all now, with this hindsight as well, we see William and Harry, who were born and bred royals, and yet have not taken to this form of interactions with the press. It is not foolish to point out that the monarchy would be damaged if Diana were hurt. Oh my word, that is the whole premise of the book that we are reading, of Palace Papers, that the outflow of Diana's death after the press, all of the churning that happened in her life, not just in the actual event of her death, but even in the, Martin Bashir and the interview that Charles did, and the unexpected release of his recorded conversations, that the press kind of fury and fervor around the Prince and Princess of Wales did cause real damage. Yes, but what is she really like is a question that should not take precedence over all humane considerations of privacy. Hear, hear. How to protect royal privacy is not at all certain. What is clear is that to Britons, the palace is no house of cards. Their Queen of Diamonds, Jack of Diamonds, and future King and Queen of Hearts are as solidly in place in public affection as were their forebears of a century ago, when Fleet Street minded its manners a little better. Wow. Well, that is the end of that article about the royals and the press. And then we get a look at the Queen visiting the New World. So here we have Queen Elizabeth there, standing so prim and proper and adorable. It says, at the National Stadium, thousands of Jamaicans snapped to attention for the Queen. The most traveled monarch in history, she has logged and sometimes slogged more than 750,000 miles since her coronation in 1953, is making her most extensive tour ever in the Northern Hemisphere. She is also taking up President Reagan's offer to come on over and see us sometime. It will be her first foray to the brave new world of California, where for weeks the glitterati have been jockeying for gilded invitations. Yes, she is pleased to get out of dreary, drizzly London and into the sunshine, but the royal purpose remains the same, to strengthen ties among friends and show her subjects that the crown is not merely an abstract symbol, but a kind, imperturbable, and tireless gal whose role is to serve rather than rule. First stop, Jamaica. So we have photographers there also clicking away in Jamaica. Here we have the Queen and the Mexican President Miguel de la Madrid toast stronger ties ahead. There she is in her little classic grin. Very sweet. I won't read all of this article, but I did like that part. Okay, so we have an article about Frank Stella's artwork. And we have lots of cigarette ads always. So this one is for more. On the back cover, we actually have the Marlboro Man. I noticed that earlier. I thought I would share it with you. I'm going to flip and see if there's anything else about the royals in this article. And I just want to say also, it's shocking, isn't it, to see that there was the capacity to latch on to the truth in 1983. But there was this sense of like, well, it won't really do any harm. We won't have anything too unexpected. But it would be bad if Diana was harmed by all of this. Oh, can you even believe that? It's crazy. Okay, there's nothing else towards the back of this magazine. I'm going to look towards the front. What I'd love to hear from you is, how do you see it? Especially this relationship between the royals and the press. That's the whole point of this article. If you could design the ideal circumstance for how the royals should relate to the press, what would that look like? We know Prince Harry and Prince William, I believe, have kind of had a wish that they didn't have to do it. I'll say it that way. And even the older royals treated it like, well, we've got to give on something. Oh, okay. Here is an IBM ad. For those younger viewers, look what these computers were like. This was the computers that I saw as computers when I was a child. In 1983, when this article was published, I would have been 3. So this was my first awareness of computers was this sort of thing. We have a dictaphone, BD and AD, before dictaphone and after dictaphone. This guy was just drowning in memos, and now he can get his work done just fine with the dictaphone. Funny. Well, so yeah, if you could design the ideal relationship between the press and the royals, what would that look like? What do you think they owe? Queen Elizabeth said, I have to be seen to be believed. And so what sort of relationship is necessary? Because the royals function differently than our political class in America. Our political class, if they go out to dinner, sometimes that's news. For example, Gavin Newsom made sweeping rules across California. You couldn't even go to beaches at various moments. There were little circles that you were allowed to sit in. Restaurants shut down. Skate parks bulldozed with sand so that kids couldn't have any fun outside. They made it as locked down as possible. Here in Texas, we would have called that commie California. We don't operate that way in Texas, and even we put up with more lockdowns than we would normally do. But California was crazy. And yet there's Gavin Newsom having his, I believe it was French market dinner with a whole host of friends, 30 or something in a room, none of them wearing masks, right in the middle of the COVID thing. So him going out to dinner was 100% news because he was being an absolute hypocrite. Here we've got a photo of Arafat and an article about him, unity with a high price tag. So I say all that to say that there are times when our ruling officials, even their private behavior, can sometimes be relevant to their ruling. However, what's that relationship with the royals? Because they really are figureheads. In a sense, what that reporter said about them being vehicles for people's social dreams is actually sort of apt. That they do, in a sense, represent the avatar of Britain. They take on, they are our family. They are our dignity. They give indication of who we are. They serve in the military. Our boys serve in the military sometimes. They seek education. We do too. They go to church and they honor tradition. We do too. So in a sense, they do serve that role for the British people. However, I want to hear from you if you think they should or to what degree. What should that relationship be? I think we'll close with this. So at the very front of this magazine is a letter from the publisher by Royal Watcher. It says, it's actually written by the editor, who is John A. Myers, but this shows Royal Watcher Mary Cronin at Buckingham Palace. We're going to read about this. On the eve of Queen Elizabeth's 5th visit to the U.S., relations between the British royal family and London's tabloid press were showing signs of strain, as this week's cover story, written by contributor John Scow, attests. By contrast, the British monarchy has enjoyed a favorable press in the U.S. ever since 1860, when Prince Edward, Queen Victoria's eldest son, visited the nation that had repudiated his family's rule. Edward's great-granddaughter Elizabeth and great-great-grandson Charles seem to have inherited his ability to evoke the admiration of Americans. Those with immediate experience of that talent include London bureau chief Bonnie Angelo, who reported on the meticulous preparations for the latest royal trip. She covered the Queen's second visit to the U.S. in 1957. Following her, Angelo recalls, I gained lasting respect for her never-wilt stamina and serenity. 13 years later, I reported the first visit of Prince Charles and Princess Anne to Washington. I could see in Charles the same skill in putting the awestruck at ease. Correspondent Mary Cronin did her first serial royal watching 20 months ago when she covered the wedding of the Prince of Wales and Lady Diana Spencer. It was elegant theater, and Cronin's 4 years as Times New York-based show business correspondent qualified her to appreciate the performance. Later that year, she followed the young couple's royal first official tour to Wales. Says Cronin of that roadshow, "It gave me a hint of the energy and persistence one needs to gather information on a royal family, preserving the aura of the kings and queens of old." For this week's cover, Cronin learned even more about the perseverance by watching the watchers of the royals. The Fleet Street reporters and photographers are a breed unto themselves, she reports, devilishly competitive, clever, and professional. The chase and the hit, the scoop, get their blood up. Cronin, who journeyed from Buckingham Palace to Acapulco last week in pursuit of the royal family, finds her fellow reporters' zeal, if not their perfervid imaginations, infectious. Says she, "I felt myself wanting a fast car with a two-way radio so that I could join the global game of royal watching, careening over icy alpine roads, slithering through steaming jungles, hiring helicopters and speedboats to find my elusive royal prey." Ooh, well, that summarizes it, doesn't it? That's what they were doing. Oh, wow. Yeah. So we do get this great look, and I'm so glad to have found this article. I mean, it's kind of scary how prescient it is, honestly. It makes me sad in a way. I don't like reading that there was the capacity, if people had wished to make the calculations and adjustments, to have, found their way through perhaps in a more healthy manner than how it played out, particularly in her life. But we're still seeing it in the lives of her sons. Harry, notably, is still irritable about this very topic. So, very timely read. No pun intended, timely. Well, I hope you have a great day. Let me know in the comments your response to these articles and ideas. And I'll see you next time. We will be back to Palace Papers in our next video. Take care. Bye.